Hey everyone, welcome back to our homestead and to our garden. Today we're going to be talking about the top survival garden crops that you can grow to help ensure food for your family in difficult times. Let's go. So having a garden in these difficult times to provide food for your family is incredibly important. The bigger the garden, the better, but being strategic about what you plant is really important. If you're interested in learning more about homesteading and gardening and how our family transitioned from a city lifestyle to a country lifestyle, stay with us here permanently by going below, hitting that subscribe button and that little notification bell. So there are two types of food crops that I would recommend that you plant in your garden, and that is those which last a long time in the garden and those which last a long time outside of the garden after you've harvested them. Well, why is that? Well, there are some vegetables that take a long time to grow, but produce food that will keep for a long time. One of those is this garlic right here. Garlic takes an incredibly long time to grow. It is incredibly hardy, but it takes about 9 months. And you're not going to be eating just garlic, right? So garlic is, it's a flavor enhancer, it's a medicinal plant. It's been touted for a long time, through many cultures, many generations, as being a natural antibiotic. This is one that I would highly recommend you have in your survival garden for all of its benefits. And it will keep for an incredibly long time once you've harvested it out. So onions are in the same family as the garlic, and they're another one that I highly recommend that you have in your survival garden. Why? For both reasons. Once these are harvested, they will keep for a long time. Cure and dry your onions, and you can go see actually a video that we did about curing and drying onions right up here. But these also have incredible health benefits to them. They are good for lowering cholesterol and triglycerides, and they also have anti-inflammatory properties. So onions are a really, really important thing to have in your survival garden. And of course, onions taste great as well. And of course we've got carrots. Carrots keep for a very long time once you harvest them, especially if you have a root cellar. So you can put those carrots in that root cellar, and we actually also have a video on how to build yourself a root cellar if you check up here. But these will keep also in the garden for a good long period of time in the winter. So if your ground hasn't frozen yet and it's just cool, your carrots will keep very well just being stored actually in the ground by themselves. You don't have to harvest them out. The only thing you have to be careful of is that they will gain too much nutrients. They'll get a little woody and they'll start putting out some odd root patterns. And you probably want to get them out of the ground at that point and get them into your root cellar. But carrots, I don't have to explain the health benefits of them. They are very, very healthy, and they are a good crop to also try to can. And we will be doing that this coming summer once these are ready to pick out. Now, what garden isn't complete without potatoes? Potatoes are an incredibly important crop to have in your garden because they last a long time after they've been harvested. You can put them in that root cellar I was talking about. You can store them in your home in a cool space, and they will keep for a very long time. You can also can potatoes, and we'll probably be doing that as well this year. They're incredibly hardy, so they're going to be very important for filling up your bellies in difficult times. I highly recommend that you have potatoes in your survival garden. So before we talk about the perennials that are in our garden that will last you a long time staying in your garden, I want to talk about two outliers that are between, and that is tomatoes and beans. Now, why am I talking about those two? One, because tomatoes are incredibly nutritious and nutrient dense, and they can really easily. You can can them with just a water bath canner and a little bit of lemon juice, and they'll stay for a long period of time. And if you buy the right tomatoes, we've got some celebrities here, and we've got some Romas over on the other side. They're so easy to take care of, so easy to can, and you will get a ton of tomatoes out of that to help build up your prepper pantry or your survival food stores. So make sure you've always got tomatoes in your garden. So the other thing also is beans. Beans are also important because they're a great source of protein, and you're going to need that in that survival garden. You're going to need that for your diet and your health. We've got a lot of pinto beans that we planted this year. Pinto beans are a little bit more or beans in general, a little bit more difficult to can. You need a pressure canner, but obviously that's easy to do. You can also freeze them, which is very easy to do, or you can dry them. Dry them out. You can do a dehydrator, or you can air dry them, and they will save for a very, very long time. Make sure you have tomatoes and beans in your garden. So there are a lot of perennials and semi-perennials that you can plant in your garden. The reason I say semi-perennials is some will overwinter and then kind of keep going next year, although if it gets too hot they'll bolt, and we'll talk about that in a minute. But one of those great perennials to have in your garden is asparagus. Now we've got probably 15 asparagus plants here that we planted 3 years ago. And asparagus kind of takes a long time to get established. You don't want to pick it right away. We did a video in our past. Go look in our archives about how to prune asparagus and how it actually grows. And not until the 6th year can you really start to harvest it heavily, or you're going to kind of mess up the root system and it won't grow as nicely or at all as it can. So I would highly recommend you have asparagus in your garden. It's nutritious, it tastes great, everybody loves asparagus, I think. But it's a great perennial for us to have in our garden. And you know what? It also attracts some pollinators once it starts flowering out, so that's pretty cool. So two semi-perennials, as I call them, and that's not probably technically correct, but I like to call them that because they can last for a long time in your garden. These collards have been in for about 8 months, and they produced a lot for us, and they overwintered and we harvested from them. Now these particular ones are finally starting to bolt out. You can see we're going to do a lot with seed saving. These are really easy to save the seeds from, and they have a lot of flowers on them, so they attract pollinators too, which is great for your garden. I highly recommend collards. So I'm going to tout this one a lot because these two plants right here have been in my garden for 3.5 years. This is Swiss chard, or some people call it perpetual spinach, and sometimes it's marketed as that. But it has been a perennial for us, and I've had some die off, but for the most part, some of these bigger plants have stayed around for a very long period of time, and it tastes great. If you go to the store and look for Swiss chard, it's incredibly expensive, but it's really easy to grow. When the aphids are attacking, or the cabbage worms are attacking the cruciferous vegetables, like we got our collards and our broccoli, the kale, and they're tearing it up, they're not bothering these at all. So besides being incredibly hardy, besides being a perennial, besides tasting great, the bugs aren't going to bother it. It's got a lot of great health benefits. Highly recommend having this in the garden because you'll be able to harvest these over a long period of time in multiple different seasons. So that's why I recommend them for your survival garden, is because when other things aren't growing, like say spring English peas, they have a very short window to grow in because if it gets too hot, they don't like it, so on and so forth. Then all this other stuff is available for you to harvest and eat. Always have some Swiss chard. Now right behind me I've got our strawberry patch. And strawberries, well, certain varieties anyway, are perennials. And they will send out runners and put out new growth every year. You can 10 times your strawberry patch if you just do a few certain things. I just watched a great video from urban farmer Curtis Stone about how to 10x your strawberries every year. It's pretty amazing. He shares his because he just has too many. But strawberries obviously taste great, very nutritious. You can freeze them or make jam, which is very nice. And also another fantastic vegetable, well, they're a fruit, they're a berry to have in your garden. So let's talk about another great thing to have in your garden. It actually can get a little out of control, but they are very nutritious and obviously incredibly delicious to have in your garden, and that are raspberries. Raspberries or blackberries or some other type of berry like that. And I know technically it's not a berry, it's an aggregate stone fruit, like a strawberry, aggregate stone fruit, but have them in your garden. They can get a little crazy, but we've got a video on how to prune these things back and how to trellis them up so where you can keep them at bay. It's really important to keep them at bay because they can get out of hand pretty quickly. Like we've got some wild blackberries on our property. I've got to mow most of them out because they're just out of control. I can't eat that many blackberries, but that's a huge blessing to have those wild ones there. But having these in your garden is awesome because they produce a lot of flowers too, which helps with pollinators. And of course, raspberry jam, you can't beat it. So one more thing that I'm going to talk about to have in your survival garden are sweet potatoes. Now, sweet potatoes are actually a root crop or a root vegetable like a carrot. They're not a tuber like a potato. They're very different, but they keep for a very, very long period of time. In my opinion, they keep longer than regular potatoes in the same environment. So potatoes usually will lose a lot of moisture. Sweet potatoes don't. They really keep for a very long period of time in more harsh storage conditions than a potato. So having sweet potatoes in your garden is very important. Another cool thing about sweet potatoes is that you can eat the leaves. So sweet potato leaves are actually very nutritious. They're eaten in a lot of Asian cultures, and they taste great. They taste very much like spinach. So when you are waiting for the root vegetable to form and to be harvested, you can eat also the leaves of that sweet potato, which I think is a win-win. It's actually feeding you doubly. So do not forget sweet potatoes in your survival garden. So the last thing I highly recommend you have in your garden are grapes. Why? Well, because they're delicious and nutritious, and you can actually shape them however you want them. And if you have a small garden, that works really well. And if you have a big garden, you can actually get more and actually fill up a good amount of space with them. And grapes, if you take care of them properly, will last for a very, very long time. Make sure you head below in the description and check out the health benefits of every single fruit and vegetable that I mentioned in this video. Now I want you to go check out this video right here, which shows you how we use a cattle panel to trellis cucumbers.